Good evening. I'm Kimberly Hunt along with Steve Atkinson at Golden Hall in San Diego, an energized electorate taking part in this historic midterm election, and we will see a change. The U.S. House already projected by ABC to go to the Democrats. They will be able to hold on to the Senate according to those projections, and now all eyes are on California.
No doubt about that. You're in the right place for the best coverage of election night here in a crazy midterm is what it's been so far. We have a team of reporters fanned out all over. It's been a very interesting night down at the Registrar of Voters office as well, where the lines have been there for hours, people waiting in line for at least 3 hours as the polls come to a close now. Let's check in with our Anthony Pura with much more there. Anthony.
Yeah, definitely long lines here at the Registrar's office. The front of the line is at the end of this massive line of hundreds of people waiting to get into the Registrar's office. Now you can see that it is wrapping around the building here all the way around this end, and then it wraps around again. Now at 8 o'clock, the polls close. That was a minute ago. If you're in line by 8 o'clock, they're going to let you vote. I just talked with an election official saying the cutoff was a hard 8 o'clock. They do have deputies standing by so that no one else tries to sneak into line past that cutoff. Now, with that said, 8 o'clock being the cutoff, 3-hour wait. This line could be here for 3 hours at least, so the last voter won't be through until around 11 o'clock if that projection holds. Now, part of the reason that this is so long is obviously the high interest in this election, but also same-day voting, conditional registration, that's playing a factor in this. A lot of people registering today and trying to get in here, so that's playing a role in this election. But we'll check in with you throughout the night for more updates. Back to you guys.
Anthony, as you show us all those people waiting so long, we're reminded San Diegans do have a lot at stake, both on a local level, at the city council level, although technically nonpartisan. In fact, if Lori Zaff loses her seat and they get a 6-3 Democratic lean in the city council, they'll have veto power over our mayor. We can also look to the state legislature, where we are primed for a supermajority, 2/3 Democratic at the state level as well. And so many races to watch, other than the fact we are already looking at these national races, and the kind of night they've had so far seems to have been going down in the House at least just the way the Democrats planned. Brian Schlonsky is in the Live Center right now with an update on those races.
Well, Kimberly and Steve, the big news there nationally is that split decision, the House going to the Democrats. As you see here, as it stands now, Republicans have already lost 17 seats, and that's not counting the ones to be expected. So the House has gone Democrat. They've taken control. The projections there, they will investigate everything from the president's tax returns to possible Russia collusion. Experts say, though, that there is a political danger in this. Can the Democrats pass any new legislation or just investigate? Meanwhile, talking about the Republicans, and here we have a look at what's going on in the Senate. They have maintained control of the Senate, even picked up a few seats, looking here at North Dakota and Indiana. The Republicans also, if we flip to this map, doing better than expected in some of the governor's races as well. And it looks like here, just within the last, since we've been on the air, Florida has now been called going to the Republicans. That was a big race, a big governor's race that a lot of people had their eyes on. If I move this out of the way, Georgia, that's another one. We're still waiting on results from that. Kimberly and Steve, back to you at Golden Hall.
All right, and we're actually going to join us in the studio right here. Wendy Patrick, our political analyst, with us this evening. Wendy, we've been talking about the Trump effect, and we were discussing how he may have played a role in these candidates that were running this go-around, whether it be for the better or for the worse in some cases.
Well said, Lindsay. Tomorrow morning is going to be either a hangover or a honeymoon, one of the two, and it's going to depend on who you are and whether or not the president was on your side. You know, we've seen these rock star rallies that the president's been having, and people are camped out and they are just waiting for hours to get in and see the president. They're probably the same kinds of people that are willing to stand for hours and go to the polls. We saw that dynamics going on right here in San Diego. But what effect will he have on what types of candidates? What we've seen is he is more effective attacking than endorsing. Remember, when he's endorsing a candidate, it seems like he's sort of on the stump giving his own speech. Yet when he's attacking, he is very much in his element. I hate to say it that way. But if you look at the results, it seems like that's where he is most effective. And that is where he may be having an impact nationally as we finally see the results coming in.
And, you know, whichever way you lean, we are seeing these record turnouts.
We are, and you know, the challenge is this, Lindsay. Enthusiasm is high on both sides, bipartisan passion, but can momentum turn into math? And if so, how is that going to break down? Nobody quite knows. We've never seen an election quite like this, probably not even close. So that is one of the reasons so many people are out at the polls voting, and that's going to really change the dynamic on both sides. I don't know about you, but we're going to be up all night watching this. It's going to be a nail biter, and already is, in many districts that were thought to be a lot easier than they are.
Yep, definitely a historic night, and great to see so many people taking part in
for sure.
this process. Thank you for joining us, Wendy.
Always a pleasure.
Appreciate it. Now we are going to go to the race for the 50th Congressional District. Democrat Amar Campa-Najjar trying to unseat incumbent Republican Duncan Hunter. Our 10 News reporter Jennifer Kastner is live at Campa-Najjar's headquarters. Jennifer.
Hi there. Yes, Campa-Najjar got here about 30 minutes ago. He gave us an interview. He's still in the room right now. He's back there. I'm not sure you can see him because there's a lot of people here, but he just gathered all of his supporters together and gave them a very inspirational speech, thanking them for all of their hard work over the past 22 months. Then later on this evening, this room is going to turn into a watch party for the rest of the night. Let's go to our video now. Before the Democratic congressional hopefuls spoke with us this evening, he made his way around the room to thank the dozens of volunteers who've supported him through this hotly contested race against incumbent Republican Duncan Hunter to win a seat in California's 50th district. He told us this is how he spent his voting day. Listen.
Started in Jamul, went to Ramona, Temecula, Fallbrook, Escondido, San Marcos, left no rock unturned. We have a people power movement who's ready to bring home the victory. It's not about me taking the seat from Duncan Hunter. It's about giving it back to all these people you see here.
You heard it, a whole lot of last-minute campaigning all day. Now he's off to a private party, and then he's heading downtown to Golden Hall for the rest of the evening. We have John Horn covering Duncan Hunter and that part of the race. Let's go to John right now.
Thank you, Jennifer. Yes, the Republican Party over here just starting their new night of celebration. They're going to do the Pledge of Allegiance in just a few minutes. A few minutes earlier, there was a collective groan when Fox News called the race for Gavin Newsom, and he, with just the polls ending. So, you know, people collectively groaned. There have been some cheers too. So let's take a look at what's going on right now. John Cox is here. He spoke to the media for about 30 seconds before, and basically just said he was looking forward to this night. He encouraged people to get out and vote. He's not giving up, and that is basically what's going on here. Now let's talk about Duncan Hunter a little bit. He is nowhere to be seen so far. He was thought to be a lock for re-election, and then he got indicted along with his wife on 60 counts, campaign fraud, pleaded not guilty in federal court earlier this year. As Jennifer mentioned, Amar Campa-Najjar shot up the polls within 48 to 45 in our most recent 10 News Union Tribune poll. I spoke to Hunter's spokesman earlier today. He said he does not plan to make any public appearances tonight. Of course, that could change, so we will keep you posted on that. But for now, we will send it back to Kim and Steve.
All right, thank you, John. Let's check in now with Michael Chin. He's at Democratic headquarters with the other side of this campaign to checking in with Gavin Newsom. So, Michael, how's it look over there? Because we know that Gavin Newsom has been polling very well so far.
We have upwards of a 15-point poll according to the most recent polls. We just heard another round of applause. You can see this is the Hotel Republic. Early arrivals multiplying for the party dubbed the Blue Wave 2018. Set to get underway in about 20 minutes. And of course, at the crest of that potential wave is the governor's race. Two-term Lieutenant Governor Gavin Newsom, buoyed by that healthy lead, voted this morning with his family in his hometown of Larkspur in Marin County. He is due at a watch party in downtown Los Angeles later tonight. Among the items on his agenda as governor, spending on a single-payer health care, universal preschool through K, job training, protecting against offshore drilling. And yesterday in a tweet, he actually tweeted, quote, "It is time to take back our country," at an appearance with Governor Jerry Brown last night. Newsom vowing to, quote, "build on Governor Brown's extraordinary legacy." Soon, we will find out if he will get that chance. We're live downtown. Michael Chen, 10 News.
Thank you, Michael. And also we want to take a look at the 49th District and talk a bit about Darrell Issa stepping away after so many years in office since 2003. His district definitely targeted protesters, making him pretty much look at, after such a tight primary, the fact that he wanted to step away. That opened up the 49th. It was mainly leaning Republican for all those years. Would have been Diane Harkey's to lose, but in fact it does look like she's in the fight of her life. Mike Levin has been double digits ahead of her in all of the polls, having a good night, and nothing today has made him any less I think happy about his prospects for the evening. So we want to right now go to Adam Rakusin. He is with the Mike Levin camp tonight.
Yeah, you talk about this seat opening up. So did the doors here to the ballroom. Here's why, because all these supporters are starting to show up. For the first time, we can actually take you inside of the ballroom and give you a little better look at what people can expect tonight. You can see some supporters gathering around. They've got the podium set up, big old Mike Levin right up in front there for when he'll come out and speak. We're hearing that he probably won't get down here to the ballroom till somewhere around 8:45, maybe around 9, after those first results start to come in. Get a better look at this race. We did catch up with Mike Levin a little earlier today. He was working the phones at his campaign headquarters in Solana Beach. Levin was positive but still pushing that message of get out and vote, despite polls showing him up in this tight race. On the other side of this, that's the same message that Diane Harkey's campaign wanted to get out as well. Down, not out. Just about an hour ago, my colleague Jeff Lasky was with that campaign in the North County as people were still on their phones trying to get people to get out there and vote. They're pushing for every last vote as well. So it's 8 p.m. right now. The first polls closing. The first election results should be coming in, giving us a little better idea of what's going to happen in this race. Despite what happens, it'll be the first time that somebody other than Darrell Issa has occupied this seat since the early 2000s. So once those numbers come in, we'll keep you updated, and certainly as the party gets going here, either way, we'll let you know what happens. Reporting live in Del Mar, Adam Rakusin, 10 News.
Adam, thank you. One of the most important races throughout the entire nation. The nation is on San Diego County with that race in the 49th here tonight. Okay, we also have some very big local races as well with our San Diego City Council. There are 4 positions up for grabs. One of those positions could be lost by an incumbent for the first time since the early 1990s. So let's check in with our Melissa Masiha. She's at the Grand Hotel with an update from that. Melissa.
And this is where the local Republicans are going to be gathering for election night. We see some of them there in the hallway. Of course, the crowd's expected to pour in here at the Grant. Again, like you mentioned, Steve, 4 seats up for grabs. 2 of those races involve Republicans. Now, these are nonpartisan positions. Both Republicans, though, need to keep their seat to avoid a Democrat supermajority. Chris Cate is the incumbent for District 6. He is running against Tommy Howe. Held a pretty commanding lead over Howe in the primary. Cate spoke to me about his priorities if he is reelected.
We still need to focus on public safety and our infrastructure. Those are 2 vital issues that we need to be focused on constantly as a city. But there are other issues that are peeking their head in our district, and not just in downtown. But you look at housing, you look at homelessness. Those are issues that we have to address and find solutions for as well too.
And the other local race we are watching is for District 2. That is between Republican incumbent Lori Zaff and Democratic challenger Dr. Jen Campbell. We are waiting for some of the Republican candidates to come in here tonight. Of course, we will bring you that as the evening develops. Reporting live at the U.S. Grant in downtown, Melissa Masiha, 10 News.
Thank you, Melissa. We are joined here at Golden Hall by longtime Congresswoman Susan Davis in the 53rd. And this evening, obviously, congratulations are in order, but your eyes are probably on the other 2 seats. Specifically, let's talk first about the 49th. Your thoughts. Mike Levin, the Democrat, looks like he will take over after that long tenure of Issa in that area that really has been a Republican stronghold.
Well, it certainly has, but I think it's in that race in the 49th, and well, actually in the race in East County as well, that so much of the energy that has been generated came forward, and people really wanted to see some change and got behind Mike Levin initially, even though he was not endorsed, initially by the party. I think in some ways it's good for people to have tough primaries because they actually, get a chance at rehearsal time, if you want to call it that. But he will be a wonderful person to work with, and I know that we'll accomplish some great things for San Diego.
And you mentioned briefly about the 50th. Duncan Hunter is under indictment right now. A lot has to play out there, but he is polling at this point ahead of Omar Campa-Najjar. With that in mind, President Trump said earlier this week in some of his rallies, act like you're voting for me on the ticket, even though he's not on this ticket. Do you think that kind of backfired, and maybe that might help Omar Campa-Najjar in the 50th?
Well, I think we'll know in a few hours. Right now it's difficult to tell. There was a lot of energy in the race, I think, with Omar and many, many volunteers. We'll see how that translates. I think that's really the big question. Where does all this energy certainly that women brought to these races, they certainly brought it to their own races, and that's why we're seeing some of the changes across the country. And I think that, these folks who are being elected now, they're pretty serious people, actually. They have a long background, and so I think they're going to want to do the right thing, solve problems, and move forward together, and certainly hope that we'll work with our Republicans to do that.
All right, we appreciate you stopping by in what is probably going to be a rather long night here in California for some of those races. Susan Davis, thank you for your time. We will continue to monitor the polls, and when we get our first results, we'll let you know that. So we will be back throughout the evening.
$8:56.
Ruben?
So what's our next one? What are we doing? This is a broadcast.
We don't know what we're doing yet.
24.
Yeah, what are we doing?
So it's a 10-minute broadcast. Wait, five? No.
No, it's not 10 minutes. It's 5 minutes. So, Kevin, what do we do first?
Okay. So, yeah, just guide us through this. What are we doing?
Yeah.
Oh, I can't see anything.
Really?
I
It's
was
5
looking
minutes.
at this. I'm not looking at that as 5. I was looking at that as like
53.
53. I was like, man, that's a long cut in.
Okay.
Yeah. Who's
Yeah.
this? Kevin? Okay. Okay. And the big races start with governor or?
Senate. Oh, I thought big races started with the U.S. Senate. So there is no order about this.
Okay. So those 5. Okay.
I knew I should have just labeled them as such. That whole thing, it was doomed from
Never
the beginning.
works out. That's all right. It'll all be here. Early numbers.
Yeah.
This is a 10 News election update.
Energized voters come out here in San Diego. I'm Kimberly Hunt along with Steve Atkinson at Golden Hall Election Central for this very electric time we've got here in San Diego. People waiting in line for hours at the Registrar of Voters office in Kearny Mesa, and we want to take a look at down there as everyone who got in line before 8 o'clock is able to wait, and for many of these people it will be hours.
No doubt. You're noticing a lot of young millennials there tonight. That's what we've been seeing all night long. All right, let's get to some of the big races very early in this. Some of these are very, very early numbers, starting with the governor's race. Only 3% of the precincts have come in so far, and this shouldn't be too surprising. Gavin Newsom has been polling well ahead of John Cox, but a lot of Republicans do vote early with those mail-in ballots. So right now, with just 3% of the precincts reporting, John Cox has that 52 to 48% lead.
And then we take a look at the U.S. Senate. Of course, Dianne Feinstein seeking a 5th term and facing the state senator Kevin De Leon. Not expected to win, but in the early numbers looking pretty good as the absentee ballots begin to come in. But Dianne Feinstein has pulled ahead of De Leon up until Election Day.
Prop 6 is one of the most important props here in California to rescind that 12-cent fuel tax that a lot of people are not happy about that was put on to us by the legislature. So far, again, a yes vote repeals the tax. Again, these are very early numbers, but right now the yes votes do lead it by just a couple of percentage points.
Anthony Pura has been at the registrar's office all afternoon and looking at those lines, and the energy just continues to kind of grow as people say they want to take part in this process throughout the day. Anthony.
Honestly, we're just starting.
Why
don't you say something?
It is around this. It is wrapping around the building over here off to this side, and you can kind of see it wrap around there. This is a 3-hour wait now. The lines closed at 8 o'clock this evening, so you can't get in line anymore, but with that 3-hour wait, we're expecting some late night voting to happen here tonight, well into 11 p.m., if not beyond. Now, the reason for that, obviously a lot of interest in this election, but also a lot of the same-day conditional voting that's been taking place here today. This is the
done, and for our community, everybody, I know you're doing a lot of hard work behind the scenes. I know, like, the media isn't important to you.
Okay, clearly we're having some audio issues right there with Anthony Pura, but as he's been talking about, as we've been talking about all night long as well, those lines have been going on since early this afternoon, 3 hours long, but they did allow people who at least got in line by 8 o'clock to come in and get their vote, and that's going to continue throughout the night. One of the most important races the entire nation is watching here tonight is the 50th district that's held by Duncan Hunter. Of course, he's under indictment right now for misuse of campaign funds. The issue is up tonight, and Amar Campanajjar has kind of closed the gap in this race. So let's check in with our Jennifer Kastner with much more on that race. Jen.
Well, as you were saying, the first numbers are in, and right now it appears that Duncan Hunter has a slight lead over Amar Campanajjar. 37% of the votes are in. Right now, 53.5% have voted for Hunter, 46.5% for Amar Campanajjar. Now, Campanajjar just took off a few minutes ago. You can see the big crowd of supporters and volunteers behind me. They are turning this area into a watch party for the rest of the night. The Democratic hopeful for California's 50th district made his way around the room here earlier on, thanking the dozens of volunteers for their continued support in this contentious and wild race against Republican incumbent Duncan Hunter. Tonight, Campanajjar told us he's feeling optimistic. Listen.
I'm pretty confident, but we're not overly confident. We're going to work hard until every single vote is counted. Until 8 p.m., we're not stopping. And we're not celebrating prematurely. We're going to keep working, earning every single vote.
And Campanajjar will end his night at Golden Hall. Reporter John Horn has been covering his opponent. John Horn, you were at the U.S. Grant Hotel downtown. Tell us what's going on.
Lots of who's who people in the Republican Party here. Duncan Hunter, not one of them. His spokesman telling me he will not be making any appearances tonight. We will keep you posted if that changes. However, what they have said in the past is they run this race like every other election. And so when the polls came out, they still kept going and kept campaigning the way they always do. Let's send it back to you, Steve and Kim.
He has already projected that the Democrats will take control of the House, but they should keep control of the Senate. And we are continuing with those national numbers and our ABC coverage throughout the evening. We'll be back from Golden Hall to give you those local numbers on very important races here in San Diego. So we'll see you in a minute.
This is a 10 News Election Update.
And welcome back to Golden Hall and our 10 News Election Special. I'm Steve Atkinson along with my co-anchor Kimberly Hunt. We have a lot of important races we've been watching throughout the night with ABC News. A lot of very important local races as well. So let's get right to it with the 49th. This is Daryl Ice's seat that he has given up for the last 18 years. This is a very close one. Again, very early numbers. Mike Levin has been polling higher in this race going into it, but right now Diane Harkey leads at 56% to 44%.
And also the Jerry Brown era is about to come to an end, concluding his decades-long chapter in state politics, and his lieutenant governor is 10 points ahead. Gavin Newsom making this campaign really about President Trump.
Dianne Feinstein, of course, trying to hold on to her seat against Kevin De Leon in the Senate race. We're going to hear from her just a little bit later, but right now she looks like she's got a pretty commanding lead in this race.
And Prop 6, which is the gas tax repeal, it really depends tonight on how the voters interpret the ballot language. A lot of controversy whether they really knew what they were voting for. A yes vote does repeal our 12-cent gas tax, and right now here in San Diego, it is not passing, and this one is really one to watch. It's been a little different statewide than it has been locally.
The Measure E is the Soccer City measure, trying to build that stadium in Mission Valley, is competing against Measure G. Right now, it is losing handily. This does not look like it's going to pass.
But on the flip side, Measure G, which is the local developers in San Diego State, they call it SDSU West. Right now, it looks like that is doing very well tonight. A Mission Valley expansion of San Diego State, giving them a stadium and other facilities, lab, housing, and things for the college to be able to grow.
Also here tonight is our political analyst who has been with us throughout the week and tonight as well, Ruben Barales. He joins us again. Let's talk a little bit about Prop 6 and what that means so far tonight, because the numbers are a little skewed when you look at it from San Diego versus statewide.
I think many San Diegans understand that it's a sales tax repeal of the gas tax, where statewide I think the opposition really framed it more as reducing infrastructure funding. So you see it's a funny quirk with the governor's race and Prop 6. The numbers are flipped. In San Diego, John Cox has the initial lead, and Prop 6 has an initial lead, but it looks statewide. Prop 6 looks to be going down right now.
And locally, it's the fight over Qualcomm Stadium, basically, in that whole area, and whether they're going to lease it or sell it to San Diego State. I am a bit surprised that it looks like Measure E, which would have been Soccer City and a soccer stadium at some point, really not doing well tonight compared to Measure G for state.
The voters have a clear message. They like SDSU, and they're saying heck no to Measure E, Soccer City. For some reason, that campaign did not connect with the voters.
Just did not at all. Yeah. All right, we are waiting to hear word from Dianne Feinstein, who should be speaking here shortly from Northern California about her race against Kevin De Leon. Looks like she's going to be reelected. We're going to cut in if need be and bring you that as well right here on ABC 10 News, so stay with us for that.
We'll be back. Oh my gosh.
This is a 10 News Election Update.
Kimberly Hunt along with Steve Atkinson back at Golden Hall here in San Diego. And big news in California. California's longtime U.S. Senator Dianne Feinstein has survived a challenge. And here she is right now in San Francisco.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for being here. Thank you, Willie Brown. I remember a long, long time ago, Willie Brown was the very first and only public official to support me when I ran for the Board of Supervisors in 1969. And Willie Brown has been a friend, a mentor, and for me, a scholar in the art of politics ever since. Ladies and gentlemen, where are you, Willie? Would you give him a big round of applause, please? I think this is a very hard time to be in the American political arena. I think the country is very factionalized. They call it tribes. I grew up in political life and never heard of tribes. I heard of parties. I heard of parties working together. I heard of passing good legislation to integrate this nation, to make people more efficient and productive in their lives. And that was always the politics and the legislation that I understood and participated in. Now I go to the Senate with 25 years under my belt, with a great constituency to represent. This state, the 5th largest economic power on earth, over 40 million people, bigger than 21 states and the District of Columbia put together, needs strong representation. And what I've learned is because the state is so big, one really has to be very active. Because if you take the money from California, you can split it with a number of other states. And California has but 2 senators. So the ability really is to be in a place, a time, and on a committee where you can get things done for your state. And in the most part, that's something called appropriations, which I now have considerable seniority on. And when Joe Biden, some 20+ years ago, asked me if I would be willing to be the first woman on the Senate Judiciary Committee, I said to him, Joe, I'm not a lawyer. And he said, that doesn't matter, but things here have to change. And that was following directly the Anita Hill hearings. Now, maybe some of you are too young to remember this, but I happened to have been in an airport and I saw a big group of people around a television set. So I went over to take a look. And what did I see but an all-male Senate Judiciary Committee grilling Anita Hill. And it was not nice. And it was not what one would like to see. And that was my incentive to run in 1992. It became the Year of the Woman because both Barbara Boxer and I were elected from California, 2 women from Washington and 2 women from Maine. And we broke the lock on power for women in the Senate of the United States. So we are now up in the 20s and growing. And the pride I take in seeing this institution grow, widen, and change is just enormous. There's still very, very big problems out there. There are problems for women. There are problems for young women. The Me Too movement. There are problems in our economy that need to be straightened out, in our social structure that need to be straightened out, education, all these things that make a great nation like ours, we can participate in with specifics. And I just want you to know that this is the greatest honor in my life, to represent my city and my state in the Senate of the United States. And I want you to know that the number of you that are here, because after all, I've had a few terms, is really surprising to me. And as I walked into this jammed room, somewhat overheated, I thought, you know, how lucky I am to have a constituency like this. How lucky I am to have a family, husband, daughter, stepdaughters that support me. And I just want you to know, ladies and gentlemen, that I will do everything in my power to be the kind and type of United States Senator, not only that I have been, but hopefully, having learned from the years, gained the experience, able to provide the leadership as the lead Democrat on the Judiciary Committee, first woman in history. What's not lost on anyone is when I got there, there were no women. And now Kamala Harris, Amy Klobuchar, a senator from Hawaii, Mazie Hirono. Now there are 4 women on the Democratic side of the Senate Judiciary Committee. And we work together, and we work with others, and I hope you'll find our service very forceful and special for you. Those of you that are women, those of you who are men, this is such a great country, and it's been factionalized and trivialized with rhetoric. We must stop that. We must come together as the great power that we are for the good of the nation and, I think, of mankind. Thank you for your support. Let's hope the vote goes well tonight. Thank you very much.
You have been listening to Senator Dianne Feinstein from San Francisco accepting what will be her 5th term in the Senate and taking back, that is, what is going to be a very powerful position for her in Washington, D.C.
We are going to go back to our coverage with ABC News, but momentarily we will come back with statewide numbers on some of the important races that affect us here in California.
This is a 10 News Election Update.
We're looking live at the Registrar of Voters office in a second here at Golden Hall. It is already starting to become electrified.
Yes.
Stephen Atkinson, along with Kimberly Hunt here as we look live over at the Registrar of Voters office. People will be waiting in that line for a long time to come. But we want to look at some of the numbers coming in right now. And as we look at the 50th district, we see that some of the polls were showing that Duncan Hunter was within 3 points. But as you look at these early numbers, with about 36% of the precincts reporting, he's about 8 percentage points ahead of Amar Campanajaro this evening.
And more of what we expected in the 49th, the seat that's been held by Darrell Issa. It looks like Mike Levin is pulling ahead now. There's about 30% of the precincts that are reporting so far. This is the way that it's been polling almost these exact same numbers.
And a good night, as expected, for California's Lieutenant Governor wanting to step into the seat of Jerry Brown, Gavin Newsom, at 57%, and he calls himself a wartime governor. So we will see what he brings.
And we heard just minutes ago from Senator Dianne Feinstein. Looks like she's going to head for her 5th term in Washington, D.C., handily right now over Kevin De Leon.
And Prop 6, and these are state numbers that we're looking at right now, by 10 percentage points not passing, that would repeal the state's 12-cent gas tax that goes toward roads and highway repair. But it's really been a tough one.
Measure E competing with Measure G. This is the Soccer City initiative that would redevelop Mission Valley Stadium into a Major League Soccer stadium. It does not look like voters like this whatsoever. It is losing very big tonight.
But SDSU West, 57% voting yes right now. The initiative that would build a college football stadium and expand college campus and housing. So it looks like it will not even really be a fight, which they've been doing for months now, since the two separated and couldn't get the same measure on the ballot together, which they initially tried to do.
Has been contentious. All right, let's get back to Prop 6, repealing the gas tax. We have Catherine Hill with us, who is here with the No on 6 campaign, again, to keep the gas tax in place right now. Much of the fight that has come from the Yes on 6 campaign says that the money was already there for road repair, just wasn't used in the right way. So I think what people, if this continues here tonight, what people really want to know is that money going to be used for the road repair specifically for it?
Well, yes, and we are thrilled that the California voters are seeing the value in putting more money into our infrastructure. What this money is going to do, what SB1 does, is it continues to chip away at the $130 billion deficit that we have in road repair. So we're very pleased that this money is going to go to our local streets and roads. We already have $1 billion coming into San Diego County.
The polls were yes if you read it as gas tax repeal, and much, much closer if it was taking away the road money. 10% ahead right now. You feeling good about that?
We're confident, and hopefully that trend will continue, yes.
Thank you, Catherine Hill.
All right, we also have our political analyst, Ruben Morales, here tonight. We've been talking a lot about the shifting nature with Democrats and Republicans in the House. Nancy Pelosi looks like she's going to return to the Speaker's job. But as we've been talking about throughout the night, that may not hold for a long time.
No, I think she's even recognized it, and there's some intonations that she may be Speaker for just one term and then hand it off to a new Democrat. So we'll see. Interesting for San Diego, if Mike Levin were to win that 49th district, San Diego will have for the first time 4 Democratic Congress members. And quite frankly, with a majority in Congress, might give San Diego Congress members an opportunity to rise in terms of leadership and get things done for San Diego, potentially on that side.
All right, and then we have Duncan Hunter in the 50th, looking like at 8 percentage points ahead of Campanajaro.
It's still early,
yes.
So those are early results. We'll see if the last-minute push for Amar Campanajaro made a difference, but right now it looks like Hunter's going to hold on to
Anything stand out to you tonight, maybe locally, in some of the races that are taking place so far?
Well, I've got to say, Measure E, Measure G, voters did not like Measure E.
Not at all.
I'm not sure exactly what it was about it, but I think part of it is the branding. San Diego State, SDSU, has such a great brand in San Diego, and the campaign that was affiliated with it did well. Interestingly enough, on Measure E, more people voted against Measure E than voted for Measure G.
Right.
Good point. And people have, there's been a little criticism with the school because San Diego State technically cannot ever try to push a ballot measure, but they came pretty darn close. And even the full page ad in Sunday's paper from the president, Adele De La Torre, was saying it would make San Diego a better region. So they kind of tried to say it's good for everyone if we have a good university and a good system. And it looks like that is the message that got through to voters.
I think voters like that. No doubt. That's the message that got across. All right, continue with us right here on ABC 10. ABC News will continue their nationwide coverage of what's taking place in what has been an incredible midterm.
We'll be back.
And welcome back to Golden Hall and 10 News election coverage of these very important midterms here tonight. It's been a crazy day throughout the nation, crazy day locally as well. Steve Atkinson along with Kimberly Hunt.
And this is Golden Hall. This is Election Central here in San Diego. But John Cox is at Republican headquarters downtown, and we want to listen to him as he takes the podium there.
Year away from college. He's going to go back to college, and I think he's going to go back a lot wiser than he was. I want to thank Dave Horowitz, Bud Caldwell, our North and South, our state finance chairs. They did just an outstanding job squeezing as much money out of every one of you, as well as all my friends and all the people who really want to make this state great. I want to thank the best political team I believe that we have put together in decades in this state, headed by Wayne Johnson and Tim Rosales. A great political director, David Reed. I called him the Prince of Darkness because he always got me up on these bus trips in the dark. And the best communications team that you've ever seen in this state, and that is the bearded wonder, Matt Shoup, right here. Matt, thank you. And your team, Victoria, Ian, all the people, and Sarah Lee, thank you for adding your efforts to this as well. And of course, the guy that drove me around, one of the Davids, David Morgan, as well as David Cushman, our grassroots director. So thank you all. Hope I included everybody in that. You know, any effort has to have a great team. Every effort has to have people that believe in you. And I hope that each and every one of you believe in the mission that we made this campaign about. And if there's anything that we did, I consider myself very proud that we highlighted the incredible struggle that the people of this state have had for years under the people that are running this state. We identified the needs of these people, the fact that they can't afford housing, they can't afford gasoline, they can't afford the basics of life. And let me tell you, this Republican Party will be back in this state. And our path to success is going to be based upon delivering the quality of life that people need so desperately. You know, I look around the country. Larry Hogan, by the way, was reelected by 15 points in Maryland today. And Larry Hogan is the governor of Maryland. Maryland has a Republican registration that's lower than ours. Now, the good news in Maryland for Larry is that he didn't need anywhere near as much money. It's a much smaller state than California. So that's the challenge in California. That's the challenge in gathering the resources to get the message out that the Republican Party stands for improving the quality of life for hardworking Californians. And let me tell you what this party also has to stand for. It has to stand for changing our political system. We have to, the one thing that I'm really proud of is that we took the high road in this campaign. We ran a campaign based upon issues and not personal attacks. I tell you what, I lament the loss of civility that we have had and we have seen in politics. And if I have anything to say about it, we're going to bring honor and civility back into our politics. But make no mistake about it, what we also need to do is we need to address the elephant in the room, and it really is an elephant, and that is the corrupting influence of special interest money. The big businesses and the big labor unions and the lobbyist class in Sacramento has had their way. They have run this state down. And I hope the lieutenant governor has a success, but you know what? He's not going to have that much success unless he deals with the influence peddlers and the people that would bend policy for their own profit. We need urgent reforms. The status quo is the status quo because somebody likes it that way and somebody's making money from it. And they're using that money to buy our political leadership. And that was demonstrated in this race. The wall-to-wall TV ads that Gavin Newsom ran were paid for by somebody. And those people want something from him. And unfortunately, maybe they'll get it. But you know, the people are going to wise up to this. They know that this system is broken and it's got to get fixed. And it's got to be done soon in order for this state to be the success that it should be. Thank you all for your steadfastness and for your love and your support. And I'm not going anywhere. I love this state and I'm going to stay involved. Thank you so much for all of your good thoughts. Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
John Cox, businessman out of Rancho Santa Fe, did run a very civil campaign against Lieutenant Governor Gavin Newsom, and he was acquiescing this evening that Gavin Newsom will be our next governor here in California. It is a historic night throughout our country, and we have an electrified voting base, and those people have waited in line throughout the evening to vote. And we've already heard from Dianne Feinstein. She will be getting her 5th full term in office, and U.S. Senate. She's already given her speech in San Francisco up at the Presidio, and so that carries on. She will be going into over
term.
25 years now.
Over 25. She's 85 years old and beginning that 5th term. And going in with a lot of power in Washington, D.C. as well. We're going to hear from Gavin Newsom here a little bit later as well in the governor's race. We have some other big races we want to tell you about here tonight, so let's get right to our boards and take a look at something, the things that are happening here tonight. Let's start with the 50th District. Duncan Hunter trying to hold on to his seat against Amar Campa-Najjar. And John Cox was just talking about running a civil race, and this has been anything but in this race right here. But at this point, with about 36% of the precincts reporting, it looks like Duncan Hunter may hold on to his seat. Still very early.
And Gavin Newsom is going to get the chance as our next governor to take on the issues that he did campaign on, talking about many things. But first we want to take a look at the 49th, and Mike Levin will replace Darrell Issa. It will go and flip from red to blue. 53 to 47% over Diane Harkey.
All right, let's get to that governor's race right now. We are talking about here about Gavin Newsom right now. We are going to hear from him just a little bit later. We just heard from John Cox, but it looks like Gavin Newsom is beginning to run away with this, with only about 22% of the precincts reporting.
And then we just spoke about this, but let's look at Dianne Feinstein's numbers. She was over Kevin De Leon. So at 85 years old, she will be going in for her 5th term, full 5th term, and 54% to 46%, which she beat the polls going into this because they were pretty close.
Prop 6 is that initiative that would repeal the 12-cent state gas tax that's currently in place right now. It does not look like this is going to pass. The No on 6 campaign outspent the Yes on 6 by about $40 million, and it looks like that's been successful for them.
Wow. And taking a look at Measure E locally, that is a stomping here. We've got 72% voting no for the Soccer City initiative to redevelop Mission Valley Stadium into a Major League Soccer stadium, as well as a River Park and other things.
Measure G is the other measure that was for the Mission Valley Stadium. This is the SDSU West initiative to build a football stadium, a campus, housing for students and some faculty. And it looks like this is going to pass. Had those two measures passed, it would have been the one with the most votes, but it looks like Measure G is the only one that's going to be standing tall. Had a lot of bipartisan support for this.
People have been waiting in line for hours to vote. If they got there by 8 o'clock, they were able to stay. Anthony Pura has been at the Registrar of Voters office throughout the evening, and I wonder if the energy is still up for so many hours. Those people were still looking like they were just happy to be there, Anthony.
Yeah, and a lot of them are happy and still very determined to vote right now. Now, as you mentioned, the 8 p.m. cutoff has come and gone, but there are still plenty of people here in line waiting to vote. If talking to people that were on this spot just a few minutes ago, they said they waited about 3 hours to get to this point, and you can see why this line just wraps around this building. Hundreds and hundreds of people still in line right now. As you said, as long as they were in line by 8 o'clock, they are still allowed to vote tonight. Now, we did see one woman that left this building very furious. She left the building after voting, saying that the wait was really frustrating, discouraged people from taking part in the election is what she worried about. But for the most part, people in line here, they are very determined to get out there and vote. Now, they're being fed also. Election officials even say that there's been one or several anonymous pizza donors ordering food for all of these people waiting to vote tonight. Now, the reason for this line, the high interest in this election, but also because of same-day registration and same-day voting, this is the only place for it. The wait time was well over 3 hours when the last person got in line at 8 p.m. So that means the last voter probably won't be able to cast their vote until after 11 o'clock. So still a very long night ahead here for people wanting to vote. It's also going to be a long night for the people that will be counting this vote, counting all those votes, and we'll toss it over to Jeff Lasky. He is inside the registrar's office where the work is happening right now. Jeff?
Yeah, Anthony, we're just seeing a flurry of activity right now. So you can see behind me some of the people standing here getting ready. These are the folks who are actually going to be scanning the ballots when they come in. So let's take you over here. You see this group of people. They just came in. These are the observers who are looking to make sure that everything's going the way it's supposed to be. The ballots will be arriving here shortly, and they'll be brought over here to these scanners. These are the folks, in many cases, county workers who are here working this extra shift to help out. Some volunteers here as well. About 160 of these machines spread out here throughout this warehouse, and this is where they're going to be counting the votes. So the ballots are just starting to arrive. In fact, we just saw the first bag come in here a few minutes ago, and once those bags arrive, there's going to be a whole lot of work to do. They're likely going to be here until the wee hours of the morning, and we'll be keeping an eye on them and seeing what's happening here as that work begins. Live here at the Registrar of Voters, Jeff Lasky, 10 News.
All right, Jeff, thank you. All right, it has been a big race throughout the night as well. A lot of people looking at what's taking place in the 49th district, the one that's replacing Darrell Issa, who's held that seat for 12 years. Let's check in with John Horn right now to get an update on that race. John.
Well, it looks like that seat is going to flip from red to blue. Remember, Darrell Issa had it for about 20 years, and Mike Levin, 53% with the vote right now, going to beat Diane Harkey, it looks like. Now, this is something that people have been talking about for a long time, but it really kind of came to a head today. Darrell Issa, speaking on Fox News, who endorsed Diane Harkey, the Republican, basically said it's going to go to a Democrat. Diane Harkey not very happy about that. Let's play you some sound first from Issa, then you can hear what Harkey just said to me just about an hour ago here.
My district was never in play this cycle. And so it was never funded. And quite frankly, we know the results already. And there will be a Democrat representing La Jolla and Solana Beach for the first time in a number of years.
Congressman Issa should have been quiet. That was not a very nice thing to do. Maybe the seat was not winnable for him. It would have been winnable for me with a little cooperation. I think it still is.
Now, Harkey told me that she texted Issa after that comment and told him he should have been quiet. He apparently tried to call her and she refused the call. Meanwhile, the 49th people, the Democrats, happy to flip that seat after those weekly protests outside of Darrell Issa's office. And so we will have a Democrat representing that 49th district, which extends from La Jolla up into southern Orange County. Let's send it back to you, Stephen Kim.
All right, thank you. And now we want to go out to Adam Rakusin. He is with Mike Levin, who will be in that seat as it turns blue, winning this district that hasn't seen a Democratic congressman representing them in many, many years. Adam.
Yeah, it's been a little bit since they've seen somebody on that side, early 2000s. We're inside the ballroom now. PAC's supporters everywhere waiting for Mike Levin to come out as we take a wide look at this. Mike Levin, a video of him was played up on the screen just a couple minutes ago. The crowd went nuts. They thought maybe it is him. We've been told they're waiting for a couple more results to come in, possibly before he comes out. Could be any time within the next few minutes. Levin does have the early lead. We know that he's doing well in San Diego County, a little bit behind in Orange County, but combined is still up overall. While we haven't gotten to speak to him this evening, we did get a chance to catch up with him earlier in the day while he explained why he's running for this position.
That I'm going to fight for all the residents of this district. I'm going to do everything I can to get to Washington, roll up my sleeves if I'm so honored to serve, and be a representative with an open heart and an open mind. My grandma always told me I had 2 ears and 1 mouth and I should use them accordingly. That's what I would do if I'm so honored to get to Washington.
So again, we're still waiting to hear from Mike Levin this evening. He could be coming out any minute now. We do know that he's going to come in, greet supporters up at the front, then take the stage back there, say a couple remarks, and then he's going to come walk the media line and we can ask our questions about this. Up right now, we're waiting to see those results to see where he stands. But as soon as we get Mike Levin, we'll make sure to bring that to you guys. Reporting live in Del Mar tonight, Adam Rakusin, 10 News.
Thank you, Adam. We're going to stay on the theme of the 49th right now because it isn't often that you see that kind of testiness out of the candidates. So Darrell Issa, as you just saw on Fox this morning, while Californians still needed to go to the ballots, said, looking at all the polls, it's a win for Mike Levin. Diane Harkey didn't like that. She also went on to say, as we bring in Ruben Barales, she also, adding to what we just aired, she said, Darrell Issa doesn't know this district.
Right.
Well, obviously he does know the district,
years,
but I think she meant
edited for 18 years.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
Maybe that he didn't know how people would vote that day.
It just shows you that, unfortunately, when the tensions are high, I think Diane Harkey rightly felt she wasn't supported enough by the National Republican Party and maybe by the incumbent. She's letting some of that frustration out, and I think we're seeing that.
But as Kim mentioned, I think I was looking at the timestamp on that. It was 7 a.m. in the morning. That's very difficult to know when he actually handpicked her at that point,
he
too.
Endorsed her.
And endorsed her.
Just unbelievable that he would come out and say that with Californians going to the polls.
Right.
Today.
Sometimes you just have to be careful what you say in public, I guess. Because, behind the scenes, I think, they know what the polls look like. They have a sense of how this might end. But often you'll find in politics, either side, the blue team or the red team, will put on a game face up through Election Day and let the results speak for themselves.
Why do you think she didn't have the help she needed from Washington, D.C. and the Republicans to finance her campaign?
Well, I think I think it's a reflection of the research and the polling that both sides did. The Democrats saw it as a real opportunity based on the previous elections and recent polling, and I think Republicans looked at it and had real concerns about being able to hold on to the seat, knowing they had to defend so many other seats.
Okay, so now for all of the Republicans in that district that look at what happened, they're all hearkening the name Rocky Chavez right about now.
Oh, yeah.
Did the Republican Party misplay this? He was a moderate, or is a moderate Republican that was very electable in that district. But prior to the primary, they decided they were going to go with Diane Harkey.
Right. Well, hindsight is 20/20. I think the Democrats realized through their research that Rocky Chavez would have been a tougher opponent in the general election, and so they spent an unprecedented amount of money attacking him in the primary so that he wouldn't make it into the general election. So I think, their strategists came to the same conclusion. They thought he would be a tougher candidate to beat in the general.
You were talking a little bit earlier about Levin winning this race. We don't know what's going to happen in the 50th yet, but with all of these Democrats here in California, that might give a power play for San Diego in D.C.
Well, the Democrats are taking over the House. Yeah. And now San Diego may have up to 4 Democratic congressional members representing the county of San Diego. That really does provide, if these representatives, you had Susan Davis on earlier, Mike Levin, others, if they're able to actually step up, they can actually produce some results for San Diego and represent San Diego well. They'll have a speaker from California. They're from California. So I think the expectation would be that they would get decent chairmanships or at least subcommittees, and they could actually get some results for things that San Diegans care about.
Do you have examples for some of the things that you think this new team, and with 4 Democrats representing the area, they can actually all come together of like mind and get them done?
Well, I think on one area, I think that would be helpful for the Democratic side and San Diego in general, support for veterans and the military, very important to San Diego. I know that Congresswoman Davis is focused on higher ed and opportunities opportunities for young people in terms of higher education. So I think there are some real opportunities that are even nonpartisan that should be able to get support on both sides of the aisle. And hopefully our delegates from San Diego will work in that regard.
All right. Okay, Ruben, we appreciate it. We're going to get back with you here in just a little bit as
Thank
well.
you.
Let's go in with Michael Chinreich now, who is with one of our San Diego County representatives, Nathan Fletcher, who's standing by running for that office as well. Michael.
Yeah, Nathan Fletcher commanding lead just moments ago. You thanked your supporters and you declared victory, Nathan.
No, it's a great night. You know, it's a really exciting feeling. But most importantly, it's good to get the campaign over, and now we got to get to work.
Your priorities during your campaign, affordable housing, homelessness. What are your priorities now moving forward?
Well, it continues to be that same thing. We have a homeless crisis that's impacting every neighborhood and every community in San Diego, and we got to step up and get it done. Mental health treatment is an important part of the homeless, but it's also a broader issue. And then, of course, housing is not just an issue for homeless. It's an issue for people that are working, that are struggling to pay the rent, struggling to be able to afford housing. And those are things where I think we really have to, we got to get to work, and we got to figure out how to get it done.
The Republicans have held these seats for a while on the county board. You campaigned on the need for change. The Democrats made a big investment in your campaign. What do you see moving forward in terms of, it is one position, it's a nonpartisan seat, but do you anticipate change coming in terms of philosophy and party philosophy?
Well, change will begin to come. It's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen immediately. We'll have successes and failures, fits and starts, but I think we're on the path, and we're on the path to a county that really focuses on investing in the lives of those who need help most. And so I think tonight was a step in the right direction. We're beginning that process, but it'll take a little bit of time.
All right. In the meantime, do you do a little celebrating tonight, or what's going to go on?
Hey, you got to enjoy the night. You know, campaigns are hard, and you got to, you enjoy the win, but with the sense of responsibility and an obligation that, with the campaign over, the campaign is a means to the office, and the office is a means to touch people's lives. And now it's time to get to the most important part, which is trying to touch those lives.
Lorena, congratulations to you, too. An easy victory. You're reelected to the State Assembly. How gratifying is it to see your husband with this victory?
Well, I'm just excited. I'm finally going to have representation at the County Board of Supervisors. It reflects the communities we live in, and it really is prioritizing the issues and needs of my constituents as well. So it's a win for our family, obviously, but it's a win for my constituents, and that's what I'm so excited about.
All right, congratulations to both of you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. That's all right. All right, so both of them, husband and wife, both elected tonight. We'll send it back to you.
Thank you, Michael. So former Assemblyman Nathan Fletcher becoming the only Democrat on the Board of Supervisors, replacing longtime Supervisor Ron Roberts, who obviously termed out because of the things that we put into place in prior elections that termed him out. But the interesting thing to watch will be 3 of those Board of Supervisor positions will come up in 2020. Now there is one Democrat among all of the other Board of Supervisors. What will happen when the other 3 are up in 2020? We'll have that and much more on these numbers coming in when we come back.
Well, good evening and welcome to Golden Hall and our 10 News Election Special. I'm Steve Atkinson along with my co-anchor Kimberly Hunt. What a night here for the midterms throughout the nation and here in San Diego, California. We are waiting to hear from what looks like is going to be the next governor of California, Gavin Newsom. He's going to speak any moment now from outside of his home outside San Francisco. In fact, this is a live picture. His wife is speaking to the audience. We're going to go to that and hear from him in just a few minutes. John Cox, his opponent, spoke just a little bit earlier and was very cordial in his basically what was his speech, trying to say that this has been a very good race, that they were not too contentious with each other. So we're going to hear from Gavin Newsom here in just a minute. But first, let's get to some of the big races. And we're talking about the congressional races that are taking place here in San Diego County, specifically the 50th race. Duncan Hunter trying to hold on to his seat. Of course, he's been under indictment for misuse of campaign funds. Very, very early on, again, still 36% of the precincts that are reporting right now. He is a leading Amar Campa-Najjar, 54% to 46%.
And we already know in the 49th district that Mike Levin will turn that district blue, seat held by Darrell Issa for so many years. And Harkey won the primary, but Levin closed that gap and led in the last poll by about 13 points. And right now, we know he will be in and will be the next congressman in the 49th district.
And again, we were talking about John Cox basically giving his concession speech to Gavin Newsom a little bit earlier. Again, waiting on Gavin Newsom to approach the podium in San Francisco in a little bit, but it looks like he's running away with this race.
And we also know that Dianne Feinstein is back in the U.S. Senate, and she has already given her speech and thanked people and talked about so many years ago when she broke a glass ceiling, her and Barbara Boxer in California going to the U.S. Senate.
Prop 6 would have repealed that state 12-cent gas tax, but it does not look like that is going to pass. Californians are really in favor of what SB 1 and what it's done for our roads thus far.
And the private development of Soccer City that would lease the land of this Chargers Stadium will not pass. 72% saying no, that hasn't had a chance all night long.
But it looks like Measure G, which is also known as SDSU West, it is winning very well right now, 57% of the vote. Again, it had a lot of bipartisan support from many different people, so it looks like that's what the people wanted for the city of San Diego and to take place in Mission Valley.
As we bring in Ruben Morales again, we have heard from John Cox. We're awaiting Gavin Newsom right now, so we'll break and go to him if he does give his acceptance speech. But I'd like to get your thoughts on that race in general. John Cox really did run on the issues. He ran on the fact we need housing, on homelessness, on the cost of living here. They are real issues that need to be fixed. And
definitely. And, you know, the interesting thing is I don't think many people disagree with the issues themselves. Homelessness is a huge issue that people are concerned about. The cost of living in California. The question is how to address it. And obviously John approached it with John Cox approached it from the conservative perspective and Newsom from the liberal perspective.
Let's actually go to Gavin Newsom in San Francisco right now. Again, that is his wife who is bringing him up to the podium. And then we are going to be listening now to Gavin Newsom. He looks like he's going to be the next governor of the state of California after a couple of terms as lieutenant governor.
He's been a quiet lieutenant governor, and 1 year into this term, he announced his candidacy and has spent 3 years campaigning and really taking on Trump, saying he was going to be audacious. Kind of hearkening back to his days as mayor of San Francisco when he took on the federal government for gay marriage. Here he is.
I'm glad you're all still awake, and I'm honored that you took the time to be here. And look, the votes, goes without saying, the votes are still being counted, and clearly your voices are still being heard. But a few minutes ago, I received a very generous call from John Cox. Thank you. We congratulated each other on a hard-fought race, and now I want to congratulate each and every one of you. Because you stood for courage for a change. And now I can stand before you knowing I will have the incredible privilege of serving as your next governor. But this victory is really your victory. Because of you, the future belongs to California. It's been a tough 2 years, but tonight America's biggest state is making the biggest statement in America. We're saying unmistakably and in unison that it's time to roll the credits on the politics of chaos and the politics of cruelty. Now is time for going far and going together. Now is the time for decency, for facts, for trust, and now is the time for truth. Now is time for leaders to lead. And to those agents of anger determined to divide us instead of unite us, it's time to pack it up and for you to pack it in. This, in every way, shape, or form, is California's moment. And to those who wonder whether polarization is permanent, who think today's big dreams are tomorrow's broken promises, who question whether a 40 million person melting pot of different faiths, different families and futures can live and prosper together, California is your answer. The sun is rising in the west and the arc of history is bending in our direction. Because this is not just a state of resistance, California is a state of results. California is America's coming attraction, a rocket-fueled engine of human industry and innovation, the nation's greatest job creator, and the 5th largest economy in the world. But the true genius of California isn't the value we work for, it's the values we fight for. This is a state where, we don't criminalize diversity, we celebrate diversity. We don't reject, we protect the most vulnerable. We don't put profit and loss ahead of clean air. We don't put profit and loss ahead of clean water and clean coastlines. We don't regulate a woman's body more than we regulate assault weapons on our streets. We don't demean, we don't discriminate, and we don't demoralize. We don't separate families, and we don't lock kids in cages. At our best, we always stand up, we step in, and we fight for what's right. See, there's a reason why California's dream is America's leading brand. Because California's dream has always been and always will be too big to fail and too powerful to bully. And here's the thing. The California dream, it's not binary. Every day we show how human endeavor can be both lucrative and inclusive. They aren't mutually exclusive. We don't just want success in the right hands, we want it in everybody's hands. But let's be honest, there's no doubt about this, the dream is still too distant for too many. We're a land of plenty, but we are far from perfect. Too many Californians are being priced out of housing, of health care, and higher education. Too many workers are feeling the ever-tightening squeeze of automation and wage stagnation. Too many children are growing up in poverty and starting school from behind. In many ways, in many places, we are simultaneously the richest and the poorest state. But after traveling California from region to region in a bus fueled by perpetual optimism, I'm more convinced than ever there's no problem in California that isn't somehow, somewhere being solved by a Californian. That's what Californians do, right? We're the most diverse state in the world's most diverse democracy. Californians by birth, Californians by choice, every generation overcoming every conceivable border and bias, all part of the same journey to ascend and succeed together. Over our own journey in the course of this campaign, I've seen it in the hopeful faces of many. I've heard it in their indelible personal stories. I've seen it in the donut store owner in Garden Grove beaming with pride because his daughter was the first in their family to attend college. I've seen it in Miss Jackie, the union home care worker in Lancaster, who dedicates her life to helping other human beings live their final days in dignity. I've seen it in Greg, an heroic homeless veteran just a few weeks back, after years and years of struggle with addiction, has found a new path thanks to treatment, and job training. And I've seen it in the bravery of Elizabeth, an 8-year-old girl in Fresno who raised her hand at my town hall and asked not about herself, but what she can do to protect her friends in the case of a school shooting. That's what this campaign's all about. It's about advancing all Californians on their journey by making this a place of equality, making California a place of opportunity, safety, and affordability for everyone. We can make their dream real, but only if we have the courage of our convictions, the courage to dream bigger and demand more, the courage to be a state of results and a state of refuge. I've listened and I've learned from Californians of every walk of life, because I know that starting tomorrow, the hard work truly begins. But tonight, I'm just overwhelmed with gratitude, and I'm humbled. I'm humbled to accept this awesome responsibility, because I know what we can accomplish working together, transforming the politically impossible into the practically inevitable. There are so many stars, so many California stars in this room tonight, too many to name, too many to enumerate. But I want to take a moment of personal privilege and mention just a few who've shined brightest for me when I needed the most, starting with my wife, Jen, a real-life Wonder Woman. Jen, who fights every day for a world where children can live free of stereotype and social inequality while being the incredible mother of our 4 remarkable children. To all my friends and family who have been there for me, many dating back to the not-so-distant days as a struggling kid with an undiagnosed reading disorder and an especially bad haircut. I still have dyslexia, and Lord knows the jury's still out on the hair. But because of their urging and unconditional support, I grew up with the audacity to think I could make a difference and the humility to know I couldn't do it alone. And as always, politics is a team sport. And I want to thank my campaign team, the best in the business. Thank you guys. As well as the incomparable army of the grassroots supporters, organizers, all those texters who were the lifeblood of this campaign. You know who you are. Thank you for your great work. I also, because I've seen so many of them, I want to thank and salute all the state legislators who are here and every public servant elected across this state tonight. We're going to serve in different branches of government, but we share the same California name on the front of our jerseys. You know, there's a famous quote, all of you know this, that we should not go where the path may lead. Don't go there, but instead go where there's no path and leave a trail. For literally my entire life, Governor Jerry Brown has been blazing his trail as a pioneer of progress for this state. He's been a role model for me, and tonight we all owe him a profound debt of gratitude. Thank you, Governor Jerry Brown. Remarkable leadership. Robert Kennedy, I thought, always said it best. He said, few will have the greatness to bend history itself. But each of us can work to change a small portion of events, and the total of those acts will be written the history of this generation. As Californians, we've been granted the extraordinary opportunity to write history's next chapter, and the extraordinary obligation to help every Californian write their own California story, even from the darkest of circumstances. Just last week in Merced, I met an extraordinary young man by the name of Joshua, who's writing his own story. He said to me, I can't vote for you. I was born in Mexico. I came here with my mom after my father passed away, and I watched her work 3 jobs as a cook to support me. I worked as a community service officer, he said, at Merced Police Department to pay his own way through college. And he said he's about to graduate with a UC degree. Joshua's also a dreamer. who spent every waking day over the past year worrying if his dream was coming to an end. But he said, Gavin, I can't vote for you, but I want you to know I'm okay. I'm okay because I'm a Californian. That's what California means to Joshua. That's what California means to the world. Now it's our turn to spend our waking days protecting that dream for every Californian. Thank you, California. Thank you all very much for being here tonight. God bless you, and the best is yet to come. Thank you all very, very much for being here tonight.
Wow. Well, that was not so much a speech about his opponent, John Cox, as it was about President Trump.
It was, and that's the way he campaigned.
Yeah.
And that is the way he says that he will go into the office of governor of California. He says he will be audacious, that he will lean in, that he will have courage for change. He has said a lot and is really bucking the federal policies that he believes are not the values of California. That's been on his mind and on the side of his bus for all these times that he's been campaigning and taking that message through California.
Gavin Newsom mentioned that he got a phone call from John Cox about 30 minutes ago. John Cox was actually speaking about an hour ago with his concession speech. Let's take a listen into that.
I called the lieutenant governor, and I wished him well. And I offered my assistance because he's going to need a lot of help. This state needs a lot of help.
So that was John Cox speaking there. You saw briefly Carl DeMaio, who was on the Yes on 6 campaign, speaking there just a moment ago. So let's go in and listen to him live right now.
That question. What the hell happened? I'll tell you what happened. California politicians have been stealing our gas tax funds for years, and tonight we've learned that they've stolen our votes as well. Make no mistake about it, California politicians defrauded California voters of an honest vote on Proposition 6. That is not an opinion. That is a fact. Nearly 1 million Californians, half Democrats and independents and half Republicans, came together in bipartisanship and signed a petition to put Prop 6 on the ballot. Those 1 million California citizens were exercising a sacred constitutional right that Governor Hiram Johnson fought and gave all citizens in 1911. And that right is to stand up and tell our government that we, the people, the citizens, are ultimately in charge. That petition had a simple title on it, Gas Tax Repeal Initiative. But when the ballots were printed, the politicians took a red pen and struck that title. Instead, they stuck a false and misleading, poll-tested title on the ballot that had no mention of gas tax repeal. In doing so, politicians lied to the voters. And just like they've been lying to taxpayers about where the gas tax funds have been going for so many years, they have shown that they are not worthy of any trust and any respect going forward. I think politicians have made a grave mistake. They think that the world ends and that the time stops on Election Day. That if they can just snooker the voters, if they can just fool the voters and keep the money, that everything will suddenly go away the next day and all will be forgiven. I'm here to warn the politicians, not so fast. Prop 6 has never been about politics.
Back here at Golden Hall, we are with Catherine Hill. She represents No on Prop 6. You just heard Carl DeMaio. And we want to just say, before we ask you your response to obviously his anger over the way it was entitled on the ballot, is Survey USA did do a poll worded as repeal of the gas tax, 55% voted for it. When you called it taking away money from road repairs, only 44% were for it. Definitely the wording did make a difference. What is your response when he says you stole it?
Well, we've really worked on putting the money out there, and we have over 6,500 projects now being implemented. So countywide, every county has many projects underway, and the title in summary is accurate. It would repeal certain gas tax or certain funding.
Road
repair funding. And so, it was an honest statement. And the Yes campaign had plenty of opportunity, and they went out statewide to get their message out. We just really felt that the California voters, and we're seeing it with the results tonight, that they want to put the money out there for infrastructure. They want the road improvements. They felt it was more important to put that money forward and have good, strong roads through the 21st century.
You outspent that campaign, the Yes on 6 campaign, by about $40 million. It's a lot of money. How much of a difference did that make?
Well, I know we were trying to make sure that people were aware that we had a broad coalition of support. We had over 600 different organizations supporting us. We had the Highway Patrol, we had firefighters, and really with their public safety message, not only do they want the road safe for citizens driving, but they want the road safe for their firefighters and their police personnel when they're going to emergencies. We also had the Chamber of Commerce seeing what an economic boom the thousands and thousands of jobs would be. And, really, we're looking at over $133 billion in deficit as far as a structural deficit for the road repairs. So this money is going to be over $5 billion a year, and it will really help pave the way for better roads.
All right. Thank you.
Thank
Catherine
you.
Hill for joining us with that response. And Anthony Pura has been out at the registrar's office all evening long. Anthony, those people were supposed to be there for hours. As long as they checked in by 8 o'clock tonight, it looks like they're still hanging in there.
Yeah, they're hanging in there, but the good news is we are seeing the end of the line here. We are finally under this tent, so some good progress there, because there's probably about an hour wait left from the end of the line, maybe even less at this point. I did meet the last person that's expected to vote tonight. This is Sean Dunn, and you were the last person, I'm guessing you got in here right at 8 o'clock, and you got to be the tail end and cutoff. Tell me, what's waiting been like for you?
Well, I've just been standing here talking to people, reading the Bible. It's just passing the time. I met a lot of nice people. No matter who they're voting for, it doesn't matter. It's just we all get to see why people fought so hard for a right to vote.
I got to ask you, you've been waiting since 8 o'clock. It is about 10:20 something right now. Has the wait been worth it? You've probably got another hour or so, too. Keep that in mind.
Yeah, it's totally worth it. I mean, I'm conditional voting because I didn't file my mail-in registration in time, so I think it's worth it. I made the decision to come and vote today, so I don't care how long it takes. I'm going to stay here. It's 100% worth it.
All right. I'm glad to hear that. A lot of people obviously feel the same way, because a lot of these people have been waiting hours in line. Now, again, the cutoff was 8 o'clock. As long as they were in line by 8 o'clock, they are good to go. And then the reason the lines were so long here is obviously because of the high interest in this election, but also because of same-day registration, same-day voting. This is the only place for it, so that's what brought a lot of these people here. And again, a long night still ahead, about an hour or so until they actually get in and vote. There's also votes coming in right now here at the registrar's office. I want to toss it to Jeff Lasky. He is inside with the poll workers and their long night ahead. Jeff?
Yeah, Anthony, those voters' long nights kind of winding down. Here the long nights are beginning. What you're seeing here behind me, these are the ballots arriving from all over the county. So these cars coming in, and you see those yellow bags. If you voted in person today, you probably slipped your ballot into one of those yellow bags. So they're arriving. They come down this assembly line here, down here. And once those ballots arrive, they come here inside to this huge warehouse here at the Registrar of Voters. And you can see right now, when we were with you about half an hour ago, these folks were waiting for the ballots. Well, they are now here, and you see them working as quickly as they can, getting the ballots through these scanning machines. About 160 of these machines here spread out throughout the course of this building. Many of these folks are county workers who worked their full day at their regular jobs with the county, all the way across the county, and they volunteered to work a little bit longer today to put in the work doing all of this. So since those ballots are really just now starting to arrive, they've got many hours of this yet to go. I was chatting with some of the volunteers here a little bit earlier, told me that on primary night they were here till well after 1 in the morning. A lot more ballots to count this time. They could be here even longer. Live inside the Registrar of Voters, Jeff Lasky, 10 News.
All right, Jeff, thank you. It's good to see a lot of those young people out there still standing in line, waiting to vote. And that one guy who got in at 8 still's got an hour to go to get in his vote. A lot of very important propositions that were on your ballot. There were 4 different cards you had to vote on this year. So let's take a look at some of those statewide propositions, starting with Prop 1. This would authorize $4 billion in bonds to pay for housing programs, mostly for vets and low income. Right now, it looks like very early, 27% of the precincts are voting, but about ahead by about 200,000 votes.
And Prop 2 is looking good. It gives the state permission to borrow about $2 billion for affordable housing, specifically for those with mental illnesses, and that's doing very well.
Prop 3 issues about $8.9 billion for water projects, including infrastructure, mostly in California's Central Valley. This is up also by about 200,000 votes, just shy of 30% of the precincts reporting.
And also Proposition 4 looks like the yeses have it. It'll be about $1.5 billion. They're all for children's hospitals, both the 8 that are state private nonprofit hospitals, as well as the 5 run by the University of California campuses.
Prop 5 expands property tax breaks for homeowners 55 and older. 29% of the precincts reporting, and it looks like this is failing at this point.
And we already know Proposition 6, we will all live with the 12-cent gas tax because that has failed tonight, the money going into transportation and road repairs.
All right, here's the interesting one. Prop 7, leaving California on daylight savings year-round. In other words, no longer have to set our clocks back like we had to do on Sunday. It looks like this is going to pass with 29% of the precincts reporting. Again, this does have to be approved by Congress as well.
And the most expensive proposition among all of them is Prop 8, kidney dialysis. And it's very interesting to see that money did not give them the yes votes they were looking for. It would require the companies that operate dialysis clinics to pay back any profits over 15% of the qualifying business costs. Not passing.
Prop 10 is one of the most interesting here in California. It broadens rent control laws throughout the state, would allow each city to determine how much a landlord can raise the rent when a new renter moves in. It looks like with 29% of the precincts reporting that the no's have it. It's 65% of the votes so far.
And there's very little opposition to Proposition 11 requiring EMTs to be on call during breaks and then pay them for doing that so they can respond to emergencies. And right now, that's handily passing.
And same goes for Prop 12. This is the amendment that would set a minimum cage space requirements for hens, pigs, and calves and ban the sales of farmers not in compliance with this, going along with Prop 2 that was elected back in about 2008. So it looks like this is going to pass right now with 59% of the vote.
Californians have been a little bit more generous with the bonds in this election than in some of the past elections. But we will continue to watch these numbers as they come in. We're going to take a break and be right back.
Live from the Scripps Studios, this is 10 News.
And welcome back to an extended election edition of 10 News at 11 o'clock. I'm Kimberly Hunt along with Steve Atkinson here at Golden Hall in what has been a historic midterm election. Voters are on fire. It is electric. They're waiting in lines across our country in record numbers voting today, and sea change on a national level and big races here in San Diego as well.
No doubt. We've had a lot of people waiting in line for hours all afternoon long. They are still out there at the Registrar of Voters office out there tonight as well. Let's check out on some of the big races that are happening throughout the nation. Our Brian Schlonsky is in the Live Center with much more. Brian.
Well, Kimberly and Steve, you touched on briefly just the historic magnitude of these midterm elections. We're going to get to that in a second. But first, I want to start with the big happening here, the split decision, the House flipping over here to the Democrats. It might not look like a blue wave when you look at the map, but the Republicans losing 25 seats, gaining control, giving it over to the Democrats. And then if we flip over to check out the Senate here, Republicans holding their lead, actually taking a couple seats as well, North Dakota, Missouri, and Indiana as well. But we talk about history and the historical impact of this election, of this midterm election. There's a couple things I want to read you here that really were striking when we were going through this. First, we have the youngest woman ever elected to Congress. That's in New York. Her name is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, just 29 years old. Then when we look at Connecticut and Massachusetts, in both of those respective states, they have elected the first ever African-American women to serve in Congress. And then in Oklahoma, Kendra Horn has won for the Democrats. And in the district where she won, she's the first Democrat to win there since the mid-70s, 44 years ago. So Kimberly and Steve, when you guys mentioned the history here, really a lot of it. And that's just the first couple things that we could pull up.
It's
a lot
been
happening.
A historic night indeed. Thank you, Brian. We know you're continuing to watch those races as well. And a race that people were watching locally is what to do with Qualcomm Stadium. That city-owned property, San Diego State will be getting it. It will be buying it for the university, building a stadium. River Park will go in. There will be lab and housing for the college, as well as other ways of using that property. Matt Boone has been at the U.S. Grant throughout the evening with the SDSU West people. Matt?
Good evening, Kimberly. Yeah, early numbers are showing that Measure G is out ahead of the competing Measure E, so that's brought a lot of excitement here in the basement of the U.S. Grant Hotel. Earlier we saw the marching band, the Aztec marching band, come in here in the room. So a lot of people mingling out and about, cheering. They can see us on TV right now. They're playing 10 News inside here, so they've got a lot to cheer about, although the numbers still are pretty early. Only about 18% of precincts have been reporting so far. We did speak earlier to the athletic director of SDSU about how he's feeling right now.
You know, we're excited about the opportunities for SDSU Mission Valley and to engage the city and the talks to purchase the property. And, you know, preliminary numbers show something positive happening for San Diego State. So, yeah, we're excited.
And of course, that would mean that the city would be able to sell the property to San Diego State. They've proposed building a brand new stadium there for the Aztecs to play. They do say that they could actually get a soccer team to play there as well. So even if this wins tonight, that doesn't necessarily mean that soccer is totally out of the question. It would just be controlled by San Diego State, which would also plan on building some office space, housing, and also educational facilities on that property. But of course, we're going to continue to monitor these results as they come in. Live at the U.S. Grant, Matt Boone, 10 News.
All right, Matt, thank you. And it's unfortunate they couldn't get these two measures together and work something out together. But the one that loses out, of course, is Measure E. That was the Soccer City plan. Our Travis Rice is at their headquarters tonight with a much somber mood there because, Travis, this one has taken a beating here this evening. Okay, so we understand Travis is not ready now. So let's bring in our political analyst, Ruben Morales, here to talk about this. You were talking about not only historic numbers of people voting, but you're talking about the demographics that are making a difference in cases like this.
Viewers see the lines, people still waiting in line right now to vote in this midterm election. They happen to be very diverse, young people that don't normally turn out in midterm elections, and that's why I think we're seeing some of these measures passing, some of the bond measures, some of the Democrats who are doing very well. I think partly it's the demographics of the voters who are coming out. We're getting a much larger voter base.
So they spend more easily than,
well, they
than
tend
voters
to be more
of the past.
progressive, more liberal, more Democrat, quite frankly.
Are you surprised when we look at those numbers, or just the images from the Registrar of Voters Office? It is now 10:36 here on a Tuesday night. Mostly millennials, from what I'm seeing. And you would think most of the time, well, we've heard so much that these people don't vote, they don't get out, they're not active about this. But active numbers, people waiting in line for 3 hours to vote.
Yeah, well, this election really, in the end, will be about the president, whether you like the president or don't like the president. And I think they've been able to mobilize young people who really have concerns about the president. And that's what you're seeing in the results.
All right. Thank you, Ruben. We have Travis Rice. One of those measures that did not do well tonight is Soccer City. Would have been private investors just leasing the land, not only Qualcomm Stadium, where we all have gone to Charger games for so long, but also their practice facility. But that not passing tonight, and Travis is with them.
Yeah, hey, good evening, Kimberly and Steve. Yeah, they certainly have the spirit here, but that doesn't necessarily materialize into political success sometimes. Now, of course, we're here at the Yes on E watch party. Things are starting to settle down as the results are pouring in now, with 18% of the precincts reporting Measure E. Voters are saying no to Measure E by a margin of about, it's a 48-point lead right now. I think 143,000 ballots have been collected so far. Now, after that initial release of results came out, the Soccer City personnel, including that MLS superstar Landon Donovan, came out and they addressed the crowd. They didn't say it was a concession speech, but it sure felt like one. We caught up with Landon Donovan a little bit after that. Take a listen.
In the end, we tried to do what we thought was right for San Diego. And like I said, if people don't want that or don't vote for that, then we have to step out of the way and let San Diegans decide what they want.
Again, 18% of precincts reporting, and it is still a 48-point lead for no on E. Voters are saying no on E thus far. So it appears the Soccer City plan will remain a dream for now. Live in the East Village, Travis Rice, 10 News.
All right, thank you, Travis. Adam Rakusin has been with the Mike Levin camp. Mike Levin taking the congressional seat in the 49th from Darrell Issa. We want to go to Adam right now as well. Happy people there in that camp.
Yeah, can we say a lot of anxious people here, ready to hear from Mike Levin, somebody who we still haven't seen. We've been told that they're waiting for another update before he's going to come out and take the stage. But just take a look at how many people are in this ballroom. It extends outside to the outside and then outside even in the hotel. When you take a look at the numbers, and people here have been cheering every time that there has been an update, we know that Mike Levin is up in San Diego County, down in Orange County, but overall still up. They've been doing this hard push to the finish. They work from morning till night. Mike Levin, from what I saw, was tweeting at 5 this morning, making phone calls at 5 this afternoon, trying to push for every last vote. We caught up with him a little earlier today, and here's what he said about why he wants this job.
That I'm going to fight for all the residents of this district. I'm going to do everything I can to get to Washington, roll up my sleeves if I'm so honored to serve, and be a representative with an open heart and an open mind. My grandma always told me I had 2 ears and 1 mouth and I should use them accordingly. That's what I would do if I'm so honored to get to Washington.
And back out here live, you can see still all the supporters who are waiting for Mike Levin to come out. They had a campaign spokesperson come out a little bit ago and talk about how they're still waiting. They're checking in on these numbers. It is still a pretty tight race. Only a couple thousand votes divide everybody at this point, but they're hoping that this can come to an end. Everybody wants to hear from him. It's been a long time since the Democrats had this seat. Darrell Issa occupying this really into the early 2000s, so they're ready to, as they say for the mayor rallies, flip this blue. They feel like they have a really good chance of that coming up. We'll let you know when Mike Levin speaks. Reporting live in Del Mar tonight, Adam Rakusin, 10 News.
Yes, we'll get back to you with that, Adam. Thank you so much. And we want to bring in Ruben Morales as we look at the 49th, because we've seen that the Democrats certainly will take over the House throughout the evening. And then here in California, the 49th plays a role in that as well as here in the state legislature locally.
That's right. So the 49th really for Democrats has been low-lying fruit. They were expected to win that seat, as Darrell Issa said this morning, to the chagrin of some. But I think what we really need to watch is by how much, and if other districts like the 50th or other Orange County districts go blue, we'll see that the margin will increase for Democrats. So right now it's just a question of how large will their majority be in Congress.
Speaking of the 50th, are you surprised at what happened there? Because it kind of went along the lines of what the polls were saying. At least that's the way it's going so far between Duncan Hunter and Amar Campa-Najjar. The polling numbers had them about 3 or 4 percentage points apart. That seems to be the way it is thus far.
Yeah, the polls seem to be holding up. The question really is Duncan Hunter's opponent did a big push, and a lot of his supporters did a big push at the very end. We'll have to see how those day of results come in.
I'd like to ask you, Ruben, when you're talking about the race between Duncan Hunter and Amar Campa-Najjar, it became so visceral. It became about Duncan Hunter is indicted, and Campa-Najjar has a family heritage that goes back to the PLO with a Palestinian father and a Mexican mother. Do you think that in the end that Campa-Najjar didn't really talk about what he stands for? He didn't really get into the issues. They were painting each other, and no one really knew what he stood for. Could that have actually hurt him in the end, more than the story they were trying to tell?
Yeah, I think, quite frankly, a lot of the voters, and you're seeing with the relatively low margin that Duncan Hunter is winning by, that you have a number of voters that were alienated by him. I think Campa-Najjar needed to mention those things, but he had to talk about what he stood for. And I think that would have made more of a difference.
It was interesting that the numbers that I was coming up with here earlier today just talked about how many people did not favor Duncan Hunter in that district. Even though they were going to vote for him, they felt like he might have been lying about the misuse of campaign funds. So
I think it's a very Republican district, so a lot of those voters are Republican, and they don't want to give up the flag, so to speak, even though they may feel that their flag holder might not be the ideal candidate.
Very good point.
And on the issues, they're still in line with Duncan Hunter very much on immigration, the things that are important in that district.
Strong with his father, who had been there for 28 years as well. All right, let's check in with our John Horn. We've been talking about what happened with this race between Mike Levin and Diane Harkey. Darrell Issa basically this morning essentially threw her under the bus. So let's check in with John Horn with much more on that. John.
Yeah, so this has been something of a little bit of late game drama here in this 49th district. Remember, Diane Harkey is a Republican. She was endorsed by Darrell Issa. He actually came to 10 News with her to do the endorsement. So fast forward to today, and Darrell Issa is on Fox News, and they ask him straight up what's going to happen, and he says this is going to go to a Democrat. That did not sit well with Diane Harkey, who had already complained about getting no support from the National Republican Party. So she basically told him to knock it off. So let's first play you the sound from Darrell Issa, then you can hear what Diane Harkey had to say after I caught up with her just a few moments ago here at the Grand Hotel.
My district was never in play this cycle, and so it was never funded. And quite frankly, we know the results already, and there will be a Democrat representing La Jolla and Solana Beach for the first time in a number of years.
Congressman Issa should have been quiet. That was not a very nice thing to do. Maybe the seat was not winnable for him. It would have been winnable for me with a little cooperation. I think it still is.
So there's still been some exchanges between the two. Harkey said that she texted Darrell Issa and told him to, quote, stay out of it. He tried to call her, and she tells me that she refused the call. And now fast forward to tonight, it looks like Mike Levin will be taking over that seat in the 49th district. Let's send it back to you, Kim and Steve.
Yes, it does, John. Thank you so much. Another contentious race is in the 49th district, and Jennifer Kastner is there at the Campa-Najjar camp right now, and you've spoken with the candidate in the 50th, excuse me.
Kimberly, Steve, as you've been reporting, the first numbers for this race are in at this time. And yes, at this time, it does appear that incumbent Duncan Hunter does have a slight lead over Democrat Amar Campa-Najjar. Again, though, only 37% of the votes are in at this time, so it's still very early on. It hasn't deterred this group back here from believing that Amar Campa-Najjar still has a chance. As you can see, the watch party is dwindling. Some people have moved on to Golden Hall, or they've gone home to watch the rest of this on TV. But just a couple of hours ago, this place was packed. And yes, Amar Campa-Najjar was here thanking everyone for all of their support in what's been called a vicious fight against Republican Duncan Hunter. We asked Campa-Najjar about trying to take over California's 50th district, which has historically been red.
I'm not a left-winger or a right-winger. I'm the whole bird. I don't care if you're on the left or the right. I don't care if you're a Trumpster or a resistor. It's not about that. It's about, do we want somebody who's on the inside in Washington who doesn't care about us or an outsider?
And Amar Campa-Najjar is now at Golden Hall, where he plans to spend the remainder of the evening. Kimberly, Steve, back to you.
All right, Jen, thank you very much. One of the measures that was taking place here in San Diego, very important to a lot of, if you have a student in the San Diego Unified School District, is Measure YY, the San Diego bond that would raise $3.5 billion for school infrastructure improvements. We have Cindy Martin with San Diego Unified with us here tonight. Looks like it's going to pass. I think one thing that voters wanted to know, in 2008 there was that $2.1 million bond, 2012 another $2.8 million bond for infrastructure. This is going to raise the average family about $300 in taxes a year. So why did we need YY?
Well, first I want to say thank you. What we're seeing, it's early tonight. I want to say thank you to the voters tonight, because they definitely said our schools matter, our students' safety and security matters. And since we passed the last bond, some things have happened. So first of all, reason why we say safety and security is since the Parkland shooting, we've learned about school safety. And that's been since the last bond. This is new information around what it takes to make our schools safe. So we talk about seen and unseen threats. And what does that look like? And we don't necessarily want to say that we want to make our schools look like prisons. We want to make them safe. But how do we do that with single points of entry, better communication systems, better ways to make schools secure with new lessons learned since Parkland? We also have new lessons learned since the incident in Flint, Michigan with the lead in the water, and figuring out what it takes to mitigate lead. When we find lead, our board has actually passed some of the strictest measures for acceptable levels of lead, more strict than most, than what's required at the state, and we believe in that. We think that that's important. I say that's the unseen threat, and being able to mitigate that and mitigate it quickly, stay on our aggressive testing model that we've put in place to be very progressive in all of this. So these two things are really important. When we say school, neighborhood safety and security, these are important. But at the end of the day, this type of bond measure is really about making promises and commitments and keeping them, and saying what it's like to have world-class classroom learning experiences, so important for our families and for our schools.
Safety of the children is of utmost importance to people, but they do want to know where the money goes.
Yes.
And specifically, are there plans already for exactly what will be bought, what will go in? What does that look like to make the kids safer?
That's a requirement for the bonds. So we have 100% transparency rating in terms of our independent citizen oversight committee that's looked at our past bonds that we've passed, what we've said we're going to do, we've been doing, and what we've put into this bond, the $3.5 billion, as you mentioned, is continuing those efforts across the system. New lessons learned, things in the last bond we didn't know about lead mitigation, we didn't know about the safety measures.
Specifically for safety, I think people want to know, will there be different types of gates? Will there be different fencing? Will there be cordoned off? Will there be fewer ways to get in? What does that look like?
One of the things we're looking at in the lessons that we've learned is a single point of entry, is what we call, so that California is great because we have open schools. It's not like back in the Midwest or East Coast where it's one building and there's one door to get in. We do have open campuses, and people like the open campuses. So what does it take to have a single point of entry and not just put up big giant fences and then say you have security? But we've put in place the vision for what that could look like, to put in the single point of entry without just a big giant fence in front of the school. What does it look like? Is there proper security at the front gate? who comes in, how do you check ID when they come in, those kinds of things. And what's written into the bond is being able to look at that school by school, and every school is a little different. There's not one exact answer where we say, yes, we're going to put a fence across every school and now we're all safe. It's not as simple as that, but there's the aspirational vision of what that's going to look like, so our families know you send our kids to our schools here and they're going to be safe.
We had a bit of a scare last week with Fletcher Elementary School. Can you talk a little about where things are right now, where you will go going forward?
Yeah, that's exactly what we've been doing. What happened at Fletcher was part of our regular testing across the district, to be proactive and aggressive in testing more than what's even required, testing every fountain. And when we find something, we immediately shut the water off, we provide the bottled water, and tonight we're looking like we're heading in the right direction to pass this bond, to be able to mitigate and have the funds that we need to mitigate the lead when we find it, and go across the district to do that.
Cindy
We're really
Martin.
grateful to San Diego and what this says about the kinds of commitments we're making to our families. They care about academic rigor, they care about athletics and health of their students and well-being, advanced technology, and a civics education, and this bond just allows us to put in place the things that are already working for our kids.
Nothing
it's
more
all about the
important,
children.
Yeah, than our children. So
all about the kids
good luck
every
to
time.
you. And
thank you so much.
Thank
Appreciate
you for joining us. District 2 in the City Council is something that we've been watching throughout the night, because as District 2 goes, so does the council. There may be a supermajority that can then have the override of the veto of the mayor, and that is exactly what happened when Lori Zaff, the incumbent, doesn't seem to be able to keep the seat, and Dr. Jennifer Campbell is 10 points ahead of her and has been ahead throughout the night. Michael Chen is taking a look at that right now. Michael.
Yeah, possible upset brewing, as you mentioned, in District 2 of the San Diego City Council District 2 race. Again, technically nonpartisan, but Democrats right now hold a 5-4 majority. Lori Zaff, the incumbent, losing by about 10 points in early returns to family practice physician Dr. Jennifer Campbell. Victory for Dr. Campbell would give the Democrats a super majority. And here's what Dr. Campbell had to say just moments ago.
It's very important because it gives us the ability to override the mayor's vetoes. And it can be any 6 people on the council. It can be bipartisan. So I think what's going to happen is we'll be more collegial than ever. We'll work with the mayor better than ever. And I'm very optimistic that our future is bright.
So in the primary, Lori Zaff actually doubled her up, 42 to 21 percentage points. But recently, an internal polling by the building trade unions, it showed Dr. Campbell up by about 10 points, just the margin you see her holding on to right now. So again, no one's declaring victory yet, but she's optimistic and waiting for the rest of the votes to come in. We'll send it back to you.
All right, thank you, Michael. One of 2 races where we might be able to see an incumbent unseated tonight, which is not something that's happened since the early 1990s here in San Diego.
And let's take a look at some of our local measures throughout the night. We are starting here with Measure Q in Chula Vista. That is looking at the cannabis business and taxing that. It would be a tax on marijuana in Chula Vista to raise about $6 million per year for the city's general fund. And right now, it's passing.
The same thing goes with Measure V, a very similar measure that's taking place in La Mesa, a tax on marijuana to raise about $2 million per year to go to the city's general fund. It looks like this one will pass as well.
And we're on a theme here with cannabis taxes. Another one in Vista, Measure Z. Right now that is neck and neck. I mean, literally there's just a few. How many votes is that? 100 and what? Who? Yeah, oh my goodness!
My gosh, even less.
So 80 votes, 80 votes between those two. So we'll take a look at that throughout the evening and watch it.
Our math is kicking in. Measure W, National City Rent Control proposal to cap rent control at 5% a year. This is different than the state proposition. This is specifically for National City, and they have this all in line that even if the state measure does not pass, this could, but it looks like it's going to fail with 16% of the precincts reporting right now.
And then Measure X right now, that's up in Oceanside. It has to do with city services and improvements there. It would be a half-cent sales tax increase from $7.75 to $8.25. And this only needs a simple majority to win, and and right now it is.
We just talked about Measure YY with Cindy Martin there with San Diego Unified, but again, it looks like this is going to pass. Again, only 16% of the precincts reporting, but it's well ahead at this point.
And we take a look at these measures as we bring in Ruben Borales again, our political advisor here, and a lot of these measures are doing fairly well tonight as well. And for people to vote for $3.5 billion for schools when we just had one in the last election is surprising to some people.
Well, it is, especially in a midterm election, and again, I think it demonstrates what a big turnout means in a midterm election. You get folks that are generally more liberal that are coming to the polls and actually voting, and I think you're seeing the results in some of the incumbents that are losing right now, and in some of the measures, the bond measures, the cannabis measures that are passing.
What about these San Diego City Council races? Maybe changing of power. A little surprised by what's happening with Lori Zapp and Campbell in their race?
Well, I think it's been considered by both sides as a very competitive seat. So I don't think it's a big surprise. I just think it's been a hard-fought election. I don't think anyone's worked harder than Lori Zapp. And Dr. Campbell's campaign obviously did a good job as well.
All right, we'll continue to look at some of these numbers and look at the issues and the changes as voters are making their opinions known in record number tonight. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Golden Hall. I'm Kimberly Hunt along with Steve Atkinson, and this room is packed. People are loud. They are energized. Other people are waiting at polls, and we have seen some upsets, and we've also seen incumbents that are keeping their spots. One of them so far is looking good in the 50th Congressional District. We have Duncan Hunter, the embattled incumbent in this race, and it's been such a contentious fight with Amar Campa-Najjar, but right now Duncan Hunter about 8 points ahead.
In the 49th, we are waiting on Mike Levin to speak here any minute now. When he does, we will go to him, but right now he is leading his race against Diane Harkey. This is about the way this has been polled for the last couple of weeks, with Levin leading this race, 34% of the vote there.
And we already know Gavin Newsom will be our next governor. He will take on issues of homelessness, immigration, global warming, and says he will do it and he will be audacious about it.
Looks like Dianne Feinstein at 85 years of age is going to continue on in Washington, D.C., entering her 5th term. She leads Kevin De Leon right now with about 34% of the precincts reporting.
There is still some shock as people look at such a popular Prop 6 repealing the 12-cent gas tax tax so unpopular. So many people wanted to change that, and yet it did not pass. Many people blaming that on how they worded it on the ballot, not a word about repealing gas taxes, but rather rescinding money for road repair.
There were two measures to try and redevelop our stadium in Mission Valley. One of them was Measure G, or the SDSU West plan. It had a lot of backing from a lot of bipartisan support. It is passing right now. This is only 19% of the vote coming in, but it looks like this is going to win.
And the rival plan that's not going to win were the private investors, the FS investors, who wanted to just lease the land, get a soccer stadium there, develop the land, develop the river park, put in retail, and it is not passing.
It has been an interesting night throughout San Diego with these local measures and with many of our local races as well. We've been talking all night long about this so-called blue wave that's been taking place throughout the nation. We have a bit of a blue wave here that's taking place in San Diego with the 49th. It looks like that seat is going to be flipped. After 18 years, Darrell Issa hanging on to that seat. It looks like that is going to take a change of heart there.
But in the 49th, Amar Campa-Najjar is with Jennifer Kastner, and he has already spoken, calling himself, and we're now looking here at that race in the 50th now, and he called himself the full bird, said, I'm not left-wing, I'm not right-wing. An interesting comment he made to Jennifer as we go out to her live. Jennifer.
Well, Kimberly, as you just said a few moments ago, yes, at this time it appears that Duncan Hunter is taking a slight lead over Amar Campa-Najjar, but at this time only 37% of the votes are in, so it's still early on. Right now is what's left of the watch party for Amar Campa-Najjar, but just a little while ago this place was packed. Let's show you video of the Democrat thanking volunteers for their support in what's been called a vicious, hotly contested battle against Republican Duncan Hunter for a seat in California's 50th district. Campa-Najjar's been defending himself against attacks from his opponent that he's a security threat. Meanwhile, Campa-Najjar's sent reminders that his opponent is under federal indictment. This is what Campa-Najjar told us he did earlier today in his final push.
I'm not a left-winger or a right-winger. I'm the whole bird. I don't care if you're on the left or the right. I don't care if you're a Trumpster or a resistor. It's not about that. It's about, do we want somebody who's on the inside in Washington who doesn't care about us, or an outsider?
And while his supporters clean up here, Amar Campa-Najjar is down at Golden Hall. 10 News repeatedly reached out to Duncan Hunter today to get reaction, but he is apparently not making any appearances. Back to you.
All right, Jen, thank you. That has been kind of an odd day. We have not heard at all from Duncan Hunter. Multiple phone calls to try and follow his campaign, this being such a very important race, and he's been very private about this, sticking with his specific constituents in this race.
Well, he has been tight with his constituents, which is where his popularity, his base, and really the dynasty of the Duncan name has come from, with his father, Duncan Hunter Sr., obviously 28 years in that same seat. And ideologically, he is still very much in step with the people in the East County and in the 50th District on issues that are important to them, such as immigration.
But I think a lot of people want a lot of questions to be answered. Let's go check in on the 49th right now. Adam Mercruzen is standing by. Mike Levin is about to speak because it looks like he's going to win this race in the 49th. Let's take a listen in.
You're the best. Let's give it back. I love you. The work of so many in our community has led us to this moment. You knocked on every door, made every call, organized and attended every rally and house party, and made sure that our voices were heard in this critical election. And well, the San Diego Registrar still needs to update their website, and there are a lot more votes to be counted. I am confident that thanks to all of you When all the votes are counted, we will have finally flipped California's 49th district. And well, tonight we celebrate a great victory in the 49th district. That's not all that we celebrate, because tonight our country has rediscovered the Democratic Party. And the Democratic Party has rediscovered its voice. I am very happy to report, as I'm sure you've seen, that because of your hard work and the efforts of campaigns like ours all across America, the U.S. House of Representatives once again is in the hands of the people. I'd like to thank my amazing wife, Chrissy. I would not be the person I am today without you. I could not have a better partner. I'm incredibly grateful for your tireless efforts to engage voters all across this district, and I've never loved you more. Thank you, sweetie. There are so many more people that I'd like to thank, and I will, if you just bear with me. I'll get to that in just a minute. But tonight is our moment to celebrate. And we will celebrate. We have worked very hard to get here. But make no mistake, the real work starts now. This is a moment for the Democratic Party to lead. That's what we have promised the American people to do. That's the responsibility and the privilege we have asked for. So now let us begin that work humbly.
That is the acceptance speech of Mike Levin. As he said, they have flipped the district. The 49th, Darrell Iss's seat, has now gone to a Democrat, Mike Levin. And he is giving his speech there and thanking his wife and thanking the people there as he will take over that district. But we want to go out to Matt Boone. A Measure G, very important on a local scale, what to do with the Qualcomm Stadium site, and it's going to San Diego State.
Yeah, Kimberly, the early numbers are showing a lead for Measure G. That's ahead of Measure E, the other proposal here tonight at the basement of the U.S. Grand Hotel. A lot of people very excited for what's going on. We've spoken to a lot of them out here. They brought in the marching band earlier. There's just been a lot of excitement for what this proposal could bring. What it is, we still don't quite know. It will likely include a stadium for the Aztec team. A soccer team could also potentially play there. But when we talked to students and former students, one of the things they were excited about was just the ability to expand the campus and expand the affordable options for housing and education.
We need more affordable options for students, and this is one other way for students to have more options. And I know that SDSU is going to do a really good job of providing those options for the residents of San Diego.
Very excited for what will happen if Measure G passes and what they're able to accomplish by taking over that site. Reporting live downtown, Matt Boone, 10 News.
All right, Matt, thank you. The competing measure was Measure E, which was the Soccer City initiative, which has taken a beating here tonight. So let's check in with our Travis Rice with an update from that headquarters. Travis.
Well, Steve, they certainly had the spirit, but there's not too many of them left now. This was the Yes on E watch party, but as the results started to pour in, some of the folks began to leave. And of course, with 18% of precincts reporting no on E, has a commanding lead by 48 points. Some 143,000 people have voted so far. But right after those results came out, the Soccer City brass, if you will, including MLS superstar Landon Donovan, came out and addressed the crowd. They said it was not a concession speech, but it sure felt like one. We caught up with Donovan after that speech. Take a listen.
When you see first results come in and they're not good, you have that sinking feeling in your stomach.
They still are optimistic, but again, with 18% reporting and a 48-point lead for the opposition, the Yes on E folks have accepted it, and it does appear that Yes on E and Soccer City will remain a dream for now. Live in the East Village, Travis Rice, 10 News.
All right, we'll see what happens in the future. At one point, they were working together trying to get one stadium, both for soccer and San Diego State. They would probably both benefit from that. Maybe they'll have to come back now and look at that option. Brian Schlonsky has been in the Live Center taking a look at the national map. We know the U.S. House went to the Democrats. The Republicans held on to the Senate, and he's watching those races throughout the country. Brian?
Well, Kimberly and Steve, that split decision you just mentioned, that's really the biggest story coming out of tonight's national midterm elections. But of course, there was some historical value in what happened today as well. We talked before this in the weeks leading up to today about the likely scenarios. And this kind of went as we figured. We figured that the Democrats would end up taking control of the House as they have. They talked about that blue wave. And while this looks like a lot of red on the map here, 27 seats were lost by the Republicans and gained then by the Democrats. And flipping over now to take a look at the Senate, this also went kind of as we expected here. We expected Republicans to hold and also maybe pick up a few seats. They did. They picked up 3, Indiana, Missouri, and North Dakota. But we mentioned some of the history that took place tonight. A lot to choose from here, but some specific ones I want to mention here coming into Congress. In New York today, we had the youngest woman ever elected to Congress. She's just 29 years old. Then in Connecticut and Massachusetts, both of those states elected for the first time in their history the first African-American women to serve in the House of Representatives. And then right in the heartland of our country, in Oklahoma, a woman has won, a Democrat, the first Democrat in that district in nearly 50 years, guys.
All right, Brian, thank you so much. A lot of interesting races throughout the nation. One of the most interesting, of course, here in California was our race for governor, Gavin Newsom and John Cox. About 45 minutes ago, Gavin Newsom gave his acceptance speech, saying that he had a phone call 30 minutes prior to that from John Cox, saying that he was conceding the race to him. In that acceptance speech, it was very interesting. Not so much about Cox as it was about President Trump. So let's go to John Horn, who is standing by with much more on this race. John.
Yeah, Gavin Newsom cruised to victory. He was leading in the polls, and we heard his acceptance speech just like you said, a few minutes ago. Now, he ran on the cost of housing, climate change, and is going to be the next governor starting in January. Here's a little bit from his acceptance speech earlier this evening.
This victory is really your victory. Because of you, the future belongs to California. You know, it's been a tough 2 years, but tonight, America's biggest state is making the biggest statement in America.
John Cox ran on lowering the cost of housing, reforming environmental laws. We heard his concession speech in this room about an hour and a half ago. Here's what he had to say in that one.
I called the lieutenant governor, and I wished him well. And I offered my assistance because he's going to need a lot of help. This state needs a lot of help.
Now, Cox said he prided himself in this campaign on sticking to the issues and not letting it devolve into personal attacks. Kim and Steve, let's send it back to you.
Massive lines outside the registrar's office all day. The last of the voters finally getting inside the building to vote, while many of them had to wait more than 3 hours to cast their ballot.
And right now, about 500 workers here counting up all of those ballots. I'll be live with Registrar of Voters, Michael Vu.
And it's been a beautiful day, but a warm-up is on the way. Plus, your chance to win $1,000 coming up. 10 News is back in 90 seconds.
test 1 2 3, test 1 2 3, test. This is the Hotel Republic.
We are back here at Golden Hall, and they are still excited and have their signs out. The energy of this election not done yet. Voters still, after waiting hours in line, the energy is still up. Anthony Pura has been with them throughout the evening at the registrar's office, where people waited and waited and waited.
Yeah, this is the home stretch for a lot of these voters. I want to show you that we have made it to inside the building now. The last of the voters here in line getting ready to go inside.
All right, well, it looks like we lost our Anthony Pura who's in there, but that is good news that they actually have people now. He's made his way inside with everybody else, but everybody has been waiting in line for hours all afternoon, many for 3 hours or more, but determined to cast their vote in this very important midterm.
And we're going to go out to Jeff Lasky now as well. Jeff.
Yeah, here inside the building that they've been working so hard to get into to cast their ballots. Behind me, about 500 workers trying to scan all of those ballots. The Registrar of Voters, Michael Vu, joining us here. Any issues, anything that's been out of the norm so far tonight?
Really what it comes down to, the operations here has been going really smoothly. As you can tell, 1,542 precincts needs to report in, and these boxers are coming in fast and furious.
I know every election is a little bit different. What makes this election different from others that you've worked over the years?
Well, again, generally in midterm elections, you don't really have too much of a high turnout. Generally, in this election, this is an open gubernatorial general election. One of the interesting things about it, it's a 2-card ballot, so every voter had to cast 2 cards. I guess you didn't have to vote 2 cards, but they could vote 1 card. But ultimately, that 2-card ballot has a number of contests on the ballot. The other thing is conditional voter registration. Second time in the statewide election where an individual could take advantage of that option, and a number of people did tonight.
Yeah, one of the reasons why perhaps it took a while for some of those voters to get inside. Michael, we appreciate it. One strange note, just a few minutes ago, the lights actually went out here in the building, but all these folks behind me, they gave kind of a wry cheer, kept on going with their work. The lights came back on about a minute later, so truly anything can happen on election night, and usually does. Live here at the Registrar of Voters, Jeff Lasky, 10 News.
That's for sure.
All right, thank you, Jeff. It's been a big night for Democrats, not only throughout the nation, but locally as well. Not just congressional races, but city council races, you name it. So let's check in with our Michael Chen, who's at Democratic headquarters with much more. Michael.
Well, this is the Hotel Republic. We're at the County Democrats Watch Party. A joyful vibe all night. The music loud and some speeches unapologetic. A unique moment unfolding when Congressman Scott Peters took to that stage. Peters coasting to an easy victory in the 52nd Congressional District. Tonight he delivered a short, combative victory speech aimed squarely at President Trump.
The country sent a message to Donald Trump that he's not having it his way anymore.
All right, so I can't quite hear it, but Peters basically said we are going to figure it out, have a nice Thanksgiving, have a nice Christmas vacation, and then figure out how to get rid of President Trump. What he was not clear on was how he might be going about doing that. Are we talking about impeachment, or are we talking about simply making sure that he is not reelected if President Trump chooses to go for reelection to the Capitol One? We're live downtown. Michael Chen.
That's why we designed savings and checking accounts
and
with
10
no
News
fees
is
or
going to be
minimums.
following
This
the elections
is
all night
Banking
long on
Reimagined.
10news.com
What's in your
and bring you any breaking details tomorrow on 10 News This Morning. And it is time for our grand giveaway.